I'm Allie Hamilton, and I am really excited to be here with Emma Tortolo, whose new book, No One You Know. I was very lucky to have received an advance copy, and it is such a beautiful book. And I am really excited to be here and getting to talk to you about it today, Emma. And happy day after Pub Day. Um, yeah, one of the things that you said to me is it feels like such a strange time to be trying to promote a book. And I obviously totally understand and relate. It feels like a strange time to be doing anything except, trying to figure out how to survive and how to help and how to, um, parent in the midst of all the things that are happening in the States right now and the way that that impacts everyone. Um, and I don't mean that in some like gross, America is the center. It's just the fact that this mad king and everything he does has an impact on everyone. And I think that your book is like so timely in that way, actually. And so, as I was reading it, I don't want to give away too much. Like, I kind of want you to decide how much we're going to give away about the book. But as the mother of a 16-year-old daughter and 19-year-old son, who is very immersed in everything that is happening in this country and heartbroken and devastated and enraged and all of the things, and also trying to figure out how to parent. And also having lost both my parents in the last few years. Like, there's that whole thing of whatever personal grief people might be going through on top of the grief, I think, collective grief of what's happening here.
hmm
And then if you have kids, not obviously not everyone has kids, but for those of us who have kids in this situation, it is so challenging. So I think it's a great time to be talking about your book and a great time for people who are in that situation to be reading your book. And congratulations on hitting it at exactly the right moment, actually. So,
No, it's funny, and maybe I do feel like people are ready to talk about grief right now, and but then I also wonder, like, maybe everyone's always thinking about grief, and I just kind of tuned into it now with this book. But it does. I'm glad you said that because I feel sheepish. It feels weird to be like, I know we're all terrified of ice and the future of this country and the planet, but also books. So
yeah,
weird, but but that is, I mean, I love the way you said that. And so much of the question I was trying to answer in this book is, when you have a kid who feels like the world has let them down or feels like the world is a scary place or a sad place, how do you be a parent? And, I used to joke when I was younger that having a miserable time in high school made me who I was, and that my best friends are people who hated middle school and high school. And then I had kids, and I was like, oh no, I don't want that for my own kids. Like, I don't want them to develop character in that way, and these things that we think we can handle for ourselves, and then trying to figure out watching someone you love go through the same thing and trying to figure out how much, if you can protect them, you can't protect them, right? You can't protect them from it. So,
I think that's and hi, somebody is joining from Australia. So hi, I saw that. Hello. Um, I think, that's been one of the hardest things for me is I feel like for the first 10 years ish, the job as a parent is to like dive in and save the day, right? And in a really literal way, especially in the beginning, you're keeping this tiny person alive. You're making sure they have shelter and they have food and they have safety and they have warmth and they have love and all of those things. Um and when they start crawling and you're how many times did you say, watch your head? Or they start walking and they're like, their heads are so heavy and they're kind of like heading places faster than their bodies, right? Like, so there's this literal way that you are keeping these people alive. And then there are the other things like, don't forget your homework. Don't forget like, here's your lunch. Here's your, like, all these things as they get older. And then around that 10th year, the job starts to be okay now, like, start to step back a little bit and don't do all those things. Like, let them start to take on some of that stuff. Like, if you forget your homework and, for example, we had like a text group, like a mom's text chat for a long time. And for years, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, if one of the kids forgot their homework, it'd be in the text thread, like, hey, does anybody have the homework? And somebody would put a picture in and then you could print it out. And I decided in fifth grade, I wasn't going to do that anymore. And I said that to my son, who's older. My son is, for me, he was my firstborn. And I said, we're not going to do that this year. So you got to write your homework down at the end of the day. And if you forget, then you forget. And when you go on the next day, you lose recess. And that's that. Like, and he said, okay, I understand. And then, of course, the first time he forgot his homework, he was begging me to text, because he didn't want to lose recess and not be out there with his friends. And I wouldn't do it. And he was furious with me, but he lost recess and he never forgot to write his homework down again. It's like that stuff is so much harder.
And it's so, daughter was just telling me, my daughter's older and she's really good at telling me how to be a better mother. She tells me what kind of mother she needs me to be for her, which is great. But she also sometimes tells me what kind of mother I should be to her brother. And she tells me I haven't done that enough with him. But also, your kids come out so differently. And she was always so much more independent. But yeah, it's so, I mean, at this point, I feel like my job is to give them the skills so that they can be out there okay in the world. I mean, my son was telling me he's almost 15. He had a sleepover recently, and he and his friends love to go out on midnight walks during sleepovers, and that's very cute. They pack water bottles and snacks, and they take flashlights. But the next morning, they were like, "Oh, look, we found this can of spray paint near the train tracks," and I just like suddenly had this retroactive panic that he was near the train tracks at midnight with a group of goofy friends. And I realized, yeah, I'm not next to him at the train tracks anymore. I can't tell him move away from the tracks. I just have to hope that I've raised the kind of kid who knows not to cross train tracks in the middle of the night and not to get too close.
Yeah. It's really, I have always found the parenting that requires the stepping back harder than the parenting that, where you can actually save the day. Like that was always easier. But there is no saving the day now. And like most of our kids, at least if you have kids, like for those of us who are, in perimenopause, or like I'm in perimenopause and some of my friends are like postmenopausal, whatever, if you have kids, obviously not everyone has kids and not everyone is dealing with this particular thing. But if you have kids who are teenagers, they are seeing all this stuff. There's nothing that you can really do about that. And I was someone who like limited screen time and, I was pretty, we did a lot of reading in my house. I read to my kids for hours every night. I was definitely, on that track. But at a certain point, it's like they're online. Even like your school is using all of that, uh, Chromebooks, and like they're online, and they get to a certain age and they're going to be seeing everything. And now my kids are, like I said, 16 and 19. They're seeing everything we're seeing.
Yeah.
These are the kids who like were doing Zoom school during the pandemic, and now they're seeing this, stuff. And it's really sad because I find it sad because I might start crying because, you have this idea at some point that you can keep your kids safe or that you're trying to enable them to have like an innocent childhood. And I feel like I was able to do that when they were little, um, to make them feel safe and to make them feel nurtured. I feel like I was able to provide that for them when they were little, but you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And the president of the United States says and does things that you would teach any middle schooler not to say or do.
Right. Like I mean, he's a bully. He's like a straight up like 1980s movie bully. And yeah, it's so hot. And I noticed that, I work in a middle school and I've been there for 10 years and I've just noticed what they think is okay, and kids have such a sense of what's fair and what's right and what's wrong. And school is supposed to be this safe place where like, I know all of these kids swear on the school bus, but they don't like being allowed to swear at school. But suddenly it's messing with their heads to see that, suddenly it's okay to make fun of disabled people and it's okay to make fun of immigrants. Like these are things we've taught them in kindergarten, right? That
You
they,
do not do. And then you have this man talking, is it shut up, piggy? Like, what? You know, and it's not normal and it's not okay and it shouldn't be normalized. And these are like, unfortunately, in this storm that we're in, these aren't even like the big stories because they can't be, right? There's so much coming at us that's insane, like Greenland and like Renee Good, that you don't, it's like the, the way he's speaking to female journalists, you barely even have time to address that.
yeah,
Journalists, period. Anyone he doesn't like, anyone who, is disagreeing with him. And for me, it's like, that's part of what is so sad is that the wealth never trickles down, but the hatred does.
really
The
does.
the bigotry does. That stuff trickles down. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, there was a woman who posted a video of her son, and I think he was playing soccer, and he was maybe like 9 or 10, and the goalie was telling him like, Trump is going to get you, and like, and he was born here. You know,
Yeah.
he was just sobbing, like this
Oh,
we are now, and I don't know, it breaks my heart. Um, and I felt like a lot of this novel is so much about parenting when, what has happened is outside the norm of maybe like the usual, you like, okay, the friend group is not inviting you to the party, right? Like that's a thing that probably most people are going to go through at some point or another if they're parenting kids, you know, um, but when you actually lose a friend, and
yeah.
I mean, it's okay to talk about that, right? We're not giving anything
No,
away.
before the book even begins. Yeah, I wanted her to, because I feel like just
Should
live.
we tell people that like that's sort of the central thing that happens is that the there are two narrators that you're taking turns here. There's the mother and daughter, and every other chapter is the mother narrating what's happening, and then the teenage daughter has a chapter. And so you're going back and forth, which I also thought was brilliant. And painful too. There were some parts of it where like you really captured the disdain of, like the teenage
Oh,
just
I've lived it.
black free zone. I was like, oh, but but the daughter loses her best friend in a very sad way. And is grappling with that grief. And the mother's trying to help her through it in all these ways she's trying to help or it's like, you're not doing it right. You're not helping me in the right way. I don't need your help. I don't want your help. You're saying it wrong, which is when you lose someone, you know, um, oh God, I mean, it just broke my heart on so many different levels because people don't know how to help. when you lose a whole person.
And that's sort of like what I was getting at in the title too, is that when you're experiencing that kind of grief, you feel like nobody knows you anymore and nobody knows what you're going through. And I think it's true that, even a teenager today who didn't lose a friend, the kind of what they're experiencing just being in the world and the planet's on fire and the president's speaking this way. It's just, these are things that a kid shouldn't have to think about. Like my son said to me the other day, he asked me if protest makes a difference because his friends were going to do a walkout and he wanted to know. And I was like, God, I don't think that question would have ever occurred to me when I was his age. And, it's, I mean, it was a privileged position to grow up for me, not thinking about that, but it's such a different world. And I think that was part of what I was getting at in the novel too, is, our kids are going through things in a way that we'll never be able to understand.
Yeah, it's not the same. I was trying to touch on that like in a note the other day. It's just, I was born in 1971, and that was post all of these huge movements, right? We had like the civil rights movement, of course. We had like the women's movement. We had, um, you know, Stonewall. We had so many we were sort of on the other side of all of these movements and eras that suggested we were on a good trajectory and things were like going to continue to get better. Not that they were perfect by any stretch, but just that like these massive things we learned about in school, the civil rights movement and the women's right, all of that we learned about, and I was only born 2 years after Stonewall, and the gay rights, like that's when that was starting. And obviously in the 80s, I mean, we couldn't even get the president to say AIDS. So it's not like it had a long way to go.
But we were right.
Does, still
Yeah.
does. But I think we had this belief when we were small that people cared and everyone in the country was like in agreement, at least, that like things should continue to go this way, even if it was going to be slow, long, hard work, that we were like trying to go this way. And then, no,
Right.
like, no. um, And it's just really painful, I think, for a lot of people who didn't live through all of those movements. Those people, my heart breaks for even more because they're like watching us fight the same battles again and they're still alive. It's not like this is in the distant history. It's like there are people that were already fighting these battles. They're still alive and they're having to like get out there and protest again. You know, that's
But
really
in my previous life, I was, when I was a sex advice writer, my writing partner and we went on this college tour that was sponsored by NARAL Pro Choice America. And they had us write this. It was like a skit, like a comedy show about reproductive rights. But we would go out and we would do like Q&As with people, and we would say, like, Roe versus Wade is not like carved in stone. Like we could lose that. And people would be like, no, like, I remember trying to say to people, like, you may lose Roe versus Wade if you don't do something now. And that seems,
nobody
oh,
believe nobody. People have been saying, like, oh, you all are hysterical. You're over worrying. That will never happen. The president only has so much power. It's like all that stuff. And here we are. And people die. Like people die as a result of these policies. And your rights, you can go backward, as we're seeing. Very sadly, you can go, the tide can go back the other way and you can get sucked back with the current and find yourself in just an absolute mess, which is where we are. So I think your book is, it's really timely especially for people who are parenting through this. But even if you aren't, anyone who's grieving, I think also is just, it does feel like when you've lost a person who is central to your life, like your mom or your dad or your best friend, you're not you're not on the normal timeline anymore. You're kind of like in this surreal timeline where it feels like for you going through it, it feels really strange that other people are on the regular timeline. Like that's what like people are buying milk somewhere, in a grocery store, and this person who was like an entire universe is not walking on this planet anymore, and you're trying to wrap your head around that, and people are like buying toothpaste somewhere. Um, and I think you did a really beautiful job of capturing that feeling, not just for a teenager, but for like a grown up too. It's very painful, and it really does knock you sideways in a way that I wasn't prepared for myself.
Yeah, and I'm I'm lucky I haven't had that myself yet, but I watched my husband lose both of his parents within the space of about a year. And I think it's shocked him, though, the way that it lingered and the way that it hit him. And I also watched him learn how to be around other people's grief, and I've tried to be better too. And I mean, I screwed up so many ways when he was grieving his parents, and I didn't know how to be around people who were grieving, and I learned so much from watching him. And I had a really close friend lost her kid a few years ago, and she was so open and generous and non-judgmental in the way that she let people into her grief. So I learned a lot from her too, and just figuring out that just to be near people's grief, because so many people are so afraid of grief, or they want it to go away. They want to fix it. They want to make everything happy again. And
Yeah.
learning, and it doesn't come easy to me, but learning to just be comfortable and just be around someone and let someone be grieving next to you and not try to cheer them up, you know?
No, no, I like the second you start talking about child loss, I'm like, I'm done. I can't even, I have someone very close, a family member of mine went through that, and a really close friend of mine went through that too. And it just, um, destroys me. Like I just, you wrote about that in the book too. It's just, like how any of us who have children even manage to get through the day is, um, because I have this, I was going to go off on another, but yeah, let's just stick with grief for a second. I think that anyone who is grieving, you know, for me, um, the loss of my mother was really the one that just, I mean, floored me. It was just really, it just knocked me off my whole, you know, it knocked me off my timeline for sure. And I, I think people, it scares them because, first of all, I think it reminds people of their own mortality or their own fragility, because everyone has people they love like that, And so it's that little reminder of like, oh God, if this is happening to this person, this could happen to me too. Like, I don't want any part of that. There's that kind of thing. There's also that feeling of, if you are someone who like wants to make things better for people, which I am like that, I'm always trying to like, that's a thing I've had to unlearn, is that desire to want to manage somebody else's feelings, make something better for someone, or like, and even your own kids, right? To try to like save them from suffering or save them from, it's like certain things, there's just nothing you can do, except be there. And being there is huge. And I think I really learned as I was grieving my mother, and I still am, it doesn't go away. It's been for me, it was the end of 2021 when I lost my mom. And I mean, I could cry like any time thinking about it, now even. Like, it doesn't go away. It's just you learn to live with it. You kind of learn to live with that sadness right underneath the surface. And I actually think it makes you a better person, to be honest, because it just makes you more aware of how many people are suffering out there and more comfortable, in that knowledge and more comfortable around people who are suffering and struggling. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's, as painful as it is to go through, and as much as it's like a club none of us want to join, um, I think being vulnerable is actually what we need more of in the
Right.
world, right?
No, and I know this from, being in that 5 years doesn't mean you're past it, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're in your 50s and going through perimenopause and you're a fully grown person with grown kids doesn't mean that 5 years is enough time, right?
No. And the thing that I think people also don't really talk about very much, and you touched on this too, in the book. You were talking, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. I mean, you went there. There's stuff about like, is there a soul, and like meditation, and like the whole idea of energy doesn't die; it just changes form, and there's a lot in there that is beautiful. You did a lovely, lovely job. And I think I lost my train of thought, but I think that, being willing to have those kinds of conversations even is part of it. It's comforting knowing that you are safe to not be okay.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's enough, just giving people the space to like, there were a lot of people in my life who, I think after like a year, we're kind of like, okay, like you're good now, right? Like you're okay now, right? And I,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
good now, aren't we? And it's like, listen, I, I don't need a lot of people to, be able to fall apart with. You know what? I only need a few. So if I have people that I know need me to like seem like I'm fine and strong and everything's okay, I can do it. I can do that for you if that's what you need. But we're not going to be close anymore because, like, I can't.
Right. Then they're
You know,
not seeing of you.
yeah. And you just figure it out. And I'd rather know anyway, like who can handle it and who can't. And it's okay. It is hard. It's painful. I was like, when you were saying you didn't know what to do and you made so many mistakes, it's like making mistakes is fine and not knowing what to do is fine. You know, I didn't know. You don't always know. And also the things that like were comforting to me going through that experience would not necessarily be comforting to someone else. Some people want solitude. They don't want you to check in. Like, it's not, there's no formula, but I think just trying is huge. Saying, I'm so sorry and I'm here.
Right.
And like, let's go for a walk. Do you have time for a walk? Can I take you out for coffee? Like, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say I screwed up, it's less that I did the wrong thing than that I did nothing,
Right.
which I think is the worst thing. One thing I've learned is like sometimes it's okay to just say I'm sorry for your loss. Like if you don't have the words, those words, like it's better than no words at all. And I had such this hang up of it has to be beautiful and original and poetic and lyrical and like and then I finally figured out like there's no words that are gonna fix anything or make it better or magically like bring light into their day. So It's just the fact that you're trying to say something. It really does not matter what you say.
No, it doesn't. And I think people, I think this idea that, sometimes people don't bring it up because they're afraid they're going to like remind you, like, oh, I don't, maybe, she's having a good day or they're having a good day today. So I don't want to bring it. It's like,
It's always that. Yeah.
never gonna forget. Like that's never gonna be a problem. So you don't have to worry about that ever. You can always check in. Um yeah, I mean I think you talked about that too in the book, that it's just like it doesn't go away. It's not you're not gonna bring someone down. I think you did just a beautiful job, you know, openly talking about grief in all these different ways without making anyone wrong or you were talking about people who do believe in a soul and do believe and people who don't, and like it just was really beautifully done. And um I think we're all grieving right now, so I think it was just, yeah. Did you want to read an excerpt?
Sure, yeah. I so yeah, so the book is it's every other chapter is like Indy is the daughter and Kate is the mother. So maybe I'll read the chapter when Kate starts talking about names. It's from very early in the book.
Yeah.
So this is Kate, the mother. We give names to assign permanence, to trick ourselves into thinking we can't lose something if it's properly labeled. Think of the millions of sparrows and trillions of ants that die each year without a name. We want to believe our time on this planet means a little more. What surprises me is how many of us, most of us, in fact, agree to name and love something we know we can't keep. Every day we get up and we brush our teeth and toast a bagel and check our email as if we're okay with this. There are so many conceivable ways to lose a child. How are parents not in a permanent state of panic? How are we not making daily sacrifices to the gods, whether or not we believe in them? It's a bargain we strike without even realizing we're doing it. I will love this child, but don't let me outlive her. As with the rising seas that will destroy cities, but only after we're gone. We go on with our days because we won't be around for the unimaginable. We understand our child will die in the same way we understand the sun will one day extinguish the earth.
Mm. Like I can't. I read a lot of your book just like it's like crying. But it's beautiful. That's what I mean. I really hope people will get a copy. It is, if you're going to read anything right now, it's very special and I think incredibly timely. And, as I said, particularly for people who are trying to parent through this time, but really for anyone who's grieving anyone, it is an absolutely extraordinary book. You did a beautiful job. So I'm really happy for you and I'm happy for, everyone that it's out in the world. I am someone who thinks we don't talk about grief enough. And um I don't think, you were saying like, is it just that has it been in the conversation and I just missed it? I don't think so. I mean, because I wondered that same thing. I know that when I went through like your husband did, like Rob did, a lot of losses really close together, which can happen. It just depends on your age, but and the age of your parents. And with mine, it was kind of not, kind of like shouldn't have happened. My parents had 20 years between them. So technically, like my mom, I think we all thought my mom was going to outlive everybody because she was never sick and
Yeah.
or went to the doctor and, but there were other issues and things that happened. I mean, she was, she's drinking for a long time. And so that'll, that'll do it. She's an alcoholic for 40 years and that'll create some other health issues that you might not see coming, unfortunately. But anyway, I lost, my mom and then my half sister 6 months later, and then my dad. It just was kind of like one thing after another. And it felt and has continued to feel like a portal kind of opened, and I did not find a lot of when you start seeking, like, okay, things that have been written, of course, there are certain, like, motherless daughters. There's some really beautiful books out there. But there's not a lot of conversation for people who are grieving and struggling. And I remember I had a GP. I was talking to Sam Baker about this at some point over at the shift. Like, I was just messaging, but I was talking to her about, I went to my general practitioner at some point because it had been, I think, about 9 months since my mom had passed, and a lot of things happened. But I just was feeling like so tearful, like all the time, just tears, just all the time. And so I went in for my physical and I said to him, could we draw blood? Because I'm just trying to figure out, I was still really regular with my cycle, but I was like, just trying to see if, maybe eh, I'm grieving my mom. So I know that's part of it, but I'm just trying to understand if, like, it could be hormonal too, and he said, would the people in your life say you're unpleasant to be around? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. He said, well, like, if I asked your kids, like, would they say you're unpleasant to be around? And I just, like, burst out crying. I was like, I certainly hope not. Like, I was like, I don't know. He's like, okay, well, I'm just asking because I could just put you on a low level, antidepressant. And I was like, I don't low level antidepressant. I'm not, yeah. And his first thought was for everyone around me. You
Right.
like, let me fix you.
Right.
For people
Not
around.
people around you. Yeah.
uh,
That is unbelievable.
yeah. Like, dude, can you just draw some blood and tell me if, like, my estrogen levels are normal? Like, could we just do that? That would be great. Uh, he's obviously not my doctor anymore, but it was just so, like, telling in that way of, we have not enough conversation going on about this. As it turned out, just to share in case anyone else is going through that, I ended up having, at a certain point, I was like, I want to try to speak to some people who might have a little more knowledge. And I had a PTSD diagnosis. My mom had ALS. So the end of her life was really painful and traumatic. Things happened in the ICU that I have images still that flood my mind sometimes and are awful. People have that when they lose people sometimes. There are things that in the book you were writing, I was thinking about, I know it's fictional, but I was just thinking about Indy. Like, if you actually went through something like that, that is what I'm talking about. Sometimes you're left with images and things that you are trying to live with that no one has the,
It shouldn't live in your body, that kind of.
no, and you need help figuring out how to, like, release that stuff, or how to manage the nervous system response when those images start flooding your mind. Like, and I've been practicing yoga and teaching yoga for 35 years, and I've got a lot of tools, and I still had a PTSD diagnosis and still was having, I had the first panic attack I've ever had in my life less than 12 hours after my mother died. I'd never had one before. I had helped people who were having them, but I'd never had one myself. So it's like, it really, it's serious, and you might really need to be talking to someone and getting help. And even if you have a lot of tools and you meditate every day and you do yoga every day and you take care of yourself, like, you still might need some very specific help with your grief. And there's
Mhm.
no shame in that. It's not, so I think you're question about whether there is a lot of conversation and you just weren't tapped into it. I don't think there's enough.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you think I got it right. Like
Uh,
I I really wanted to get it right. Like I didn't want to screw that up.
No, I feel like you got that right, and you really the teenage mom, teenager, and how hard it is to try to figure out like how to help and to keep trying even when you're like being, shut out. Um the fear that you feel when you're like, I'm not getting it right and I know my child is not okay. Oh, it's just you really did a beautiful job. So how can they buy your book? Where can
Um, Anywhere that you get it, if like your local independent bookstore, anywhere online, like Bookshop online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, it's everywhere. And they can go to my website. All the links are on my website. EmmaTortolo.com has various different links. And my local bookstore, Oblong Books, is selling signed copies. So if you
let's
want it,
try to support independent bookstores if possible. Let's do that.
yeah.
Let's, yeah, I'm all for it. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we got to do this. And yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. It was wonderful to talk to you. I knew it would be. And yeah, I wish you all the success in the world with this book and whatever else you decide to write next.
Thank you so much. I really love this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I'm sure we'll talk again. All right. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Here we go.